what should be her potential route for 2025? And when does IndyCar come into question, especially since Andretti has Ericsson, Herta, and Kirkwood on track?
Yeah, Isha, I think you brought up a perfect example in Danica Patrick, and Ben and I have had this conversation on this show previously. She had such great potential, and I feel like she was on the cusp of doing really great things in the Xfinity series. And then she made the bigger marketing move, arguably some may say, to the Cup series, and then obviously did not have as much success in that series. So going back to Jamie Chadwick, she has officially gotten that first win in the INDY NXT series. Of course, she is so decorated coming from the W series, and she's one of the current reserve drivers on the Williams team in F1. I think it's going to be for her to stay with Andretti. Probably not a move to next season's IndyCar team. All of those drivers are race winners in that series. They have multi-year contracts, and they are running fairly well in the championship standings right now with a lot of season left to go. If she were to make the move to IndyCar, I think she potentially would bring a lot of marketability along and with her presence in that series and a lot of fans. But if you are going to be running on a team that doesn't necessarily have the backing as an Andretti, then how well are you going to be performing in that series? Is making the jump really going to be worth it for her own personal career, just to move into that series, but not necessarily have the performance and outcome that she's looking for? So for me, I'm hopeful that she would continue on with Indy NXT, just because she has done so well this year in comparison to her inaugural year last year. And if she's doing a race win already at this point of the season, who knows? Maybe she is a championship contender next year. So my hope and vote is for Indy NXT again for her next year.
Totally agree. And, if you want to bring up Danica Patrick, Jamie Chadwick's already done in Indy NXT what Danica Patrick couldn't do in what was NASCAR Nationwide at the time, and that's win a race. And Danica, just pulling up her 2012 stats here, only 4 top 10s in 33 races, 1 pole position, maybe should have won a race at Montreal. Of course, that idiot fan threw a shoe out onto the track. We'll never know what would have happened with the car being damaged after she ran over that, unfortunately. But, that race aside and a few good runs here or there aside, I think Kelly Earnhardt Miller said on Dale Jr.'s podcast a couple of years ago when Haley Deegan was on, actually, but just giving her advice not to rush it up, because she brought up Danica Patrick and said, I wish that she had stayed with us 1 or 2 more Xfinity years, because she was just starting to figure that series out. But then the fame and fortunes of the Cup Series came calling to her name there. And I think she was brought up way too quickly and ultimately probably ended her career a few years earlier than we were expecting, based on the lack of success that she had because she made that jump too quickly. So again, we've seen tremendous improvement year to year from Jamie Chadwick here, but I'm in total agreement with Emily. I think that a jump at this point would be a pretty tall task for her to take. And then you have to consider the fact that, the last time Andretti was running 4 cars, Devlin DeFrancesco was in that 29 car and couldn't even so much as get a top 10. Now, how much of that was Devlin? How much of that was Andretti's resources being spread too thin across 4 entries rather than the 3 they had now? I think that's a fair question, but I don't think that that would work in Chadwick's favor. I think Andretti's been a little bit stronger as a 3-car team, at least in terms of pace. We know Colton Herta has been struggling to finish these races here over the last couple of weeks, but I think for Chadwick right now, I think Andretti's a great place to be in the long term. If she were to make that jump next year, not to throw them under the bus, but a smaller team like Dale Coyne that doesn't have the same level of resources, that, would be something similar to maybe Pippa Mann trying to make that jump around 2010, 2011 and getting stuck with a smaller team and never really being able to progress past, running in the teens and 20s in the IndyCar Series. I think the best thing for her is to spend another year, ideally at Andretti in Indy NXT, go for a championship, and then look to making the jump in 26 if IndyCar is ultimately where she ends up long term.
You perfectly took one of my points about don't go to a smaller team, Ben, because I agree. With Andretti, right now it's a 3-car team. They're looking pretty solid. When they were a 4-car team, Devlin DeFrancesco was just struggling. Nothing really going on. Last thing you want to do is to expand, have it where Jamie Chadwick or just in general the entire team is just not performing. Or, worst case, go into that smaller team. Yeah, they might have a technical alliance with Honda, Andretti, but as you said, they get stuck mid-pack. Then it just seems if some other drivers come in, get the opportunity, they might be jumped over Jamie Chadwick to get that spot. And when you look at their driver lineup, they're all Colton Herta, Kyle Kirkwood. They're both pretty young. We know they're going to be around a long time. Marcus Ericsson, many years of racing. How much longer? I'm starting to think maybe that could be a potential route if she does a good year in Indy next year. If Marcus Ericsson decides to look elsewhere after 2 years, that could be a potential landing spot. Jamie Chadwick, right now 26 years old, still a lot of racing time, so I would make it unanimous, I guess, and don't rush out to IndyCar next year. I'm curious, though, what would we think if Andrea was like, hey, we'll put together a car for her for the Indianapolis 500? Would that be an opportunity to jump on, or do we think just focus on Indy next?
I have some thoughts on that, Emily. I'll defer to you, though, if you want to go first.
I mean, I certainly would be excited to watch and be in support of her. But I think to Ben's point, which I think he may bring some of those oval stats back into his point here. I think she's still growing in her expertise and performance in ovals, and that is the most iconic oval in the world. Some would argue. So I think it certainly would be an experience for her. But I think anyone backing her in that position would have to give her grace and understanding that chances are she's probably not going to finish in the top 10 or 15, but certainly a very talented driver. And I mean, who knows? Andretti does have the foundation and resources to put together something like that. I mean, we had a fourth car in Marco this year, so we'll have to see. But Ben, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a full season effort, 25 or 26 here, and all of us unanimously are saying 26. I think the last thing you want to do is, try to go all in on an Indy only effort for next year. And I think the main reason why is, I'm going to get on the soapbox here about the Freedom 100. We got the IndyCar schedule today with the Fox News and everything. I will still stand on that soapbox and say, save the Freedom 100, bring that race back. And the reason is because I don't think it's any coincidence that poor Nolan Siegel was the only driver that got bumped this year. And you look at what the Indy NXT schedule looks like right now, and we don't go to very many ovals. We don't even go. We don't go to any super speedway ovals where you're using that aero kit like a Texas Motor Speedway or, a track like that, a mile and a half even, where you can get used to that style of racing. And then you throw Nolan Siegel in a Dale Coyne car and expect him to go qualify for the 500 with only his rookie orientation or whatever. It's a very tall task for any driver, and Jamie Chadwick would be no exception here. So I think, trying to put together an Indy 500 only program, would be, something that I would want to try to avoid for her. If we're talking about her being, at the level that she's at right now, if Indy NXT is the better place for her to run full time, I don't think you mess with a one-off in that situation either.